So for me, the gap I had to close was how do I make what seems impossible possible? And that for me was just as simple as finding the people to surround yourself with that really made you uncomfortable with the fact that their normal is this thing that I aspire to become one day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very excited for this week's guest, the international man of mystery, Mr. Jamie Gruber. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Good to see you. Good to see all that you're doing, and I appreciate your flexibility with my reschedules and everything. So good to be.
No, I do that to others all the time, so I appreciate you taking the time to come on. You're in the middle of some travel back to the U.S. We'll talk about that, but for our listeners, Jamie, husband and father of two young boys. You were in the insurance industry for a very long time, an executive at an insurance company, no more, real estate investor. And I'm very interested in learning more about the evolution of that and how that's changed over time.
Sure.
Very, very strong social media influencer and creator. If you guys search Jamie Gruber, you will find him. We'll ask more about it at the end. And I said international man of mystery because I think it's probably been about 2 years, Jamie. 2 years ago or so, you moved to the Dominican Republic. You moved your whole family there. So what the heck led to that? How did you find yourself in the DR?
It's funny. I had the job. I was there 21 years, from the age of 21 to the age of 42. That was the duration of it. The last 4 or so were where it really became evident to me, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I got promoted at the 17-year mark, and I was miserable and found a way out. But the whole thing I anchored to in advance of quitting the job was this pie in the sky vision. And I distill it down. I call it the essence of it was to travel with my family 3+ months anywhere in the world. The company I worked for, Progressive Insurance was the company, is a US based company. They had protocols in place, rightfully so, where you can't log in abroad. You can't log in even in Canada. Like, it's a US based company. Their security protocols don't allow that. So either I need to move to another company in the insurance industry, and that made me gag. The idea of staying in claims, like my life's work was insurance claims. Made a lot of money, but boy, not fulfilling. Or I had to find a whole new path. So this vision I anchored into of travel 3+ months with my family was really just the idea of having the ability and the freedom to go do that, or even becoming the person who has that capability is probably the better way to talk about a vision, because we change over the course of a 5-year vision. I heard it once said, like, you might say, I want the Porsche as your vision. I'm driving a Porsche. And then you get to the point where you can, and you decide you're going to go take a 5-month trip to Italy. It's like, that doesn't mean your vision wasn't right. You became the person that can get the Porsche, but you changed a bit to what's important to you. It wasn't the material item. It was the travel or whatever. And so that's what I feel like is the path to the Dominican Republic for me. It was, we want to do something. If I were to picture it when I wrote it, 3+ months, it's like, we're going to go to Portugal, we're going to go to Italy, we're going to go to, whatever. But then when we got to a point a year after I quit that I realized I wasn't going to go broke, it was like, you know what? We went to the DR. My wife's from there originally, grew up till the age of 12. And we spent a month and we watched our kids play with their little cousins that lived there. And we thought, what if we did this for like a year? And 6 months later, we did. And then being there, we can talk about that. Being there showed us some things we didn't realize that we really appreciated, and we stayed, and we intend to stay for a while. But that was how. The vision led to the action, which led to the possibility later on of the vision manifesting in maybe a bit of a different way. But I became the person that could travel for 3+ months if I wanted with my family, and that's how we did it.
I want to ask a question about vision. This is like, so for our listeners, we kind of said, hey, what are some topics? This was not one of them, but here we go.
Yeah.
You said you had a vision for kind of a thing or an experience, but part of that was who you, like the person that you can, becoming the person that can get the vision. If we're thinking about what our vision is, should we be thinking about what the vision is, what we'll be doing, or can we write a vision about who we become. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do think that a vision has to have some clarity for you as a human being who sees things in a certain way as to what life is like. I always say there's three elements to a vision, three elements to a great vision. The first is that you write it as if it's already happened. Go to a future date 5 years from now, whatever today's date is, August 7th, 2029, let's say. Place yourself there. What do you look like 5 years older? What does your wife, husband? What do your kids look like 5 years older? Where are you living? What has happened in the last 6 months? Like really go to that date, meditate into it, go to that date. And when you write out your vision, write it like it's happened already. Hey, it's August 7th, 2029. This is what life is. So I think you have to define what it looks like, feels like, so on. But the other two elements are important. I think that one is, the second element is you have to write it for you and write it for you only. It shouldn't be this vision for everybody in your life crushing it. It's a vision for you. So unless you co-created something like I did with my family, we wanted to travel. So I incorporated that in my vision. But too many visions are like, this is what's happening in my life, and my wife's business is crushing it, and my kids are straight A students. And it's like, well, you don't control those things. So your kids may not want to be straight A students. And like it or not, that's not your choice. But if you're placing the burden of other people manifesting something on your vision to manifest, I think that's irresponsible. So just write it for you and whatever's been co-created. And then the third, and this is the hardest and the most important element of the vision, I think this is what you're getting at, is you got to take the how out of it. Part of what you're getting at. Take the how out. Too many people, I included, write a vision like this. This is what my life is, and that happened because I bought 3 businesses. I bought 100 units of real estate. It's like, you don't know. You don't know the path to the outcome. Those are goals. Goals are short-term theories that you're going to put in place for 3, 6, 9 a year, months or a year, and test them and determine, are they not? If you asked me back then, I would have said, oh, I'm going to be a syndicator. Or not even a syndicator. I was going to buy a bunch of my own real estate. And then I got into syndication, and then I got into personal branding. Right? I couldn't have told you the path to traveling 3+ months with where I want to go. But to your question specifically, those to me are the 3 elements. I don't think it's enough to write a vision like I'm the kind of person that. I think you have to define what it is right now that inspires the heck out of you materially, experientially, whatever it is that you're living in the next 3, 5 years, but understand intellectually that the true aim of that is, who do I have to be to buy that Porsche? And let that track back to the short-term goals you create in order for you to manifest that vision. So I hope that makes sense. You could dive deeper, but I think you have to be clear on what you want, what the outcome is, and write it like it's happened. Write it for you, write it and do so in such a way that there's no how in it. But I think you have to understand intellectually, like the real aim is not the Porsche. It's not the travel. It's the kind of guy who can buy the Porsche. It's the kind of guy who can do the travel, and let that inform the goals you have in the short term.
No, I like that. And I want to get into that more, but so I want to go back. So the original anchor, the original vision, as you call it, was travel 3 months with your family. You didn't know where, didn't know the details, but you knew you had to do something different. So what were the next couple steps you took? And I think we can talk about what you did in the past, but also I'm curious throughout that process, what was, looking back now, what was the gap in who you had to become to get to where you are?
The gap was, I guess, making it possible for me to do the impossible. Let me break that down. The gap for me was I could definitely see how I could do it. Sure. I mean, I could see like buying real estate or starting a business. I mean, it all makes sense. There's people in the world that do that. But the people I surrounded myself with, or that I naturally was surrounded by at the time, fellow coworkers, family members, whatever, weren't people I could see possibility in. It was too far away. It was pie in the sky. It was social media guy. It was somebody on TV show. It was a book I read by this guy. So for me, the gap I had to close was, how do I make what seems impossible possible? And that for me was just as simple as finding the people to surround yourself with that really made you uncomfortable with the fact that their normal is this thing that I aspire to become one day. Like, oh, you're all doing it or can do it, or you're the types of people that can do it if you just change a circumstance around in your current structure or whatever. But you can do this stuff that I'm talking about wanting to do. That makes it really feel possible and normal to then pursue the path that I wanted to.
And I talk about, or different people bring up, like the different factors of success. And I think the one that comes up a fair amount is your network, your associations. But I also think it is so undervalued and underappreciated, because it's all relative. People only have the perspective of their current network, and they're not like, it's a lot of work to change that as well. So you make like you changed that. I mean, quitting your job, you naturally change that, but you changed
You had
who
to
you're
before.
around.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, it's even less their perspective that you're surrounded by, and it's more what are the people around you hold you accountable to what they believe in you, what they believe of you.
Hmm.
So who are you going to have around you holding accountable? I call it the difference between having remember when friends and imagine when friends. So like a remember when friend is somebody who that's how they talk. Like, remember when we did this? Remember we got
Yep.
drunk? Remember college? Like that's those friends. They've known you. They know everything that you've ever been. So if you're insurance executive like me, and you start making these little weird sounds about like, you know what, I might throw away this $400,000 job with all of the equity and everything else. I might set that down with my wife who's stay at home and my two young kids and have to get my own health insurance. Like I'm thinking about like maybe this isn't the future for me. Well, remember when friends are like, what are you talking about, man? Like you grinded to this point. You didn't have a degree. You were lucky to get this job. And then you moved to Boston from New York to get an elevated. You moved from I'm sorry, you moved from New York to Boston, then Boston to Michigan to get the executive job. Like, what do you mean? Like, dude, pump the
Right.
brakes here.
Think this through.
Be
Yeah.
careful. Right. So that's because they know me for where I've been. They want to keep me safe in the version of me that I've always been. Remember when friends. Imagine when friends are like, well, I don't know. I don't care who you've been. Where are you going? And to those imagine when friends, all I was, hey, I'm going to travel 3+ months with my family anywhere in the world. And that's going to require me to make some big changes, like quit my job and so on. So the moment I would lose my nerve, or I would hear that little chirp in my ear from a mother, a father, a friend, a coworker, or whatever, telling me on the day that I kind of felt it anyway, that I'm making a big mistake pursuing this path, the day that that happens, the moment that happens, you've got that imagine when friend who you say that to, like, yeah, I don't know if this is the path for me, who goes, what are you talking about? This doesn't make sense to me. Just as much as the remember when friend doesn't understand why you would leave this job, the
Yep.
imagine when friend doesn't understand why you would stay. So having that imagine when friend to draw you toward and hold you accountable to the person you haven't become yet, for me, was everything. So yeah, I had to do that while I had the job. And for two reasons, really. It was to one, disconnect me from that remember when network and get me to a new network with new possibilities. But two, when I did quit the job, that was my safety net. That was what was securing me, was like, okay, I've got these guys. I didn't quit and then find the people. I didn't will myself to the end and then find the people that are imagine when. I stepped out of the matrix, if you will, into this life that I have right now with a nice support group underneath me of guys that are imagine when.
Yeah. And I think, first of all, I love the remember when and imagine when. And two things come to mind. First of all, I think we should all ask ourselves, are we the remember when friends ourselves, or are we the imagine when friends that's challenging people? And I think if you shift, if you remember when, then make a shift. But if you shift to the imagine when friend, you're going to quickly find out who your remember when friends and imagine when friends are, because you're going to start to imagine. They're going to be like, hold on, remember when. They're going to go back. They're going to go back. So just even using
Great.
it as a tool to assess who your friends are, and which one are they. So I want to go back again, talk a little bit of tactics. So you changed your network. Let's talk about real estate for a little bit, and what was the plan and how did that evolve to where you are now? Like what was real estate's part in this journey?
Real estate was the practical, reasonable, explainable way that I could see getting out of the job. I say explainable because fear of judgment's big. And if I am only surrounded by, remember when people at the beginning of this journey and saying, I'm going to try something a little bit different and unique here, it's explainable to somebody. It makes sense. Like, I'm going to buy real estate. Oh, great investment. Oh, yeah, amazing. Right. Like, if I started out by saying, hey, guys, I'm going to be a YouTuber and quit my $400,000 a year job, like, I didn't have the confidence to say that to my friend group and network, my Remember When friends,
Yep.
for it to sound reasonable. So it made sense to me. It made sense to them. Let's go. It's time to buy some real estate.
And I mean, you said, I think you said practical, explainable, believable, but a lot of that was for you. That was also for you. You believed it, right? Like for you back then, you wouldn't have believed that you could generate all the opportunities you have with your growing your personal brand and other things. We'll talk about that, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't have believed that then. So you didn't, I don't think you would have, right?
No, no. And if it might have been in my weirdest of weird dreams to think like I could build a brand, have some level of influence in some niche, but no, I didn't see this as the path. It wasn't a plan. It was I liked real estate. I still do. It made sense to me. I could see where my financial position would allow me to partake, and I could explain it to my friends and family.
And so real estate for you was the vehicle to get to the anchor vision. And I know you bought some multifamily assets, you built up a portfolio. I think you sold some of those throughout the process and you've shifted. So just at a really high level, what has that looked like?
Yeah, bought what two duplexes, burned them, sold them, bought a 16 unit. Didn't want to sell that, or if I had a one, I regretted it's that one, but we did sell it, did well on it. 22 unit, I was a small KP on for a deal in Cleveland, sold that as well. But then I shipped over to syndication, and we syndicated about 250 units. I raised capital, I did marketing, everything I could do remotely, like leaning into the vision. I didn't have to be on the ground in that role that I had with that syndication group. But today, that's where the majority of my real estate holdings are. I've got my house here in Michigan. I'm investing in an apartment right now in the Dominican, but the majority of my real estate holdings are all GP and LP shares in things that I do with Quantum Capital.
Yep. And I like that. And honestly, it goes back to just for a time period, it was the practical, explainable, believable step. At some point, that shifted to
It
where there
did.
were other paths and other ways to not only make a living, but also I think more pursue what you were really passionate about. So when did that shift take place? When and why?
It's funny, the full shift over time, but like the tactic that we use to grow, and I say we, it was a partner and I, to grow this multifamily business that we could foresee. You listen to Bigger Pockets, 100 doors, $100 a door, all that, right? Like I have these two duplexes. I want to go faster. I want to buy a 10 or a 20 unit. Didn't feel confident or like I was capitalized enough to do that on my own. Found a partner and we started looking at stuff. And the first thing we learned was by going to commercial brokers, multifamily brokers. Like we weren't anything in that world. Even though I had my 5 doors, he had 3 or 4. It's like, hey, we're jumping up. Commercial brokers have buyers, they have secondary buyers, and they have you, this
Yep.
newbie who hasn't proven a darn thing. So for us, we were like, well, how do we work around this? You know what we should do, because we didn't see it in our market? Let's start a meetup, a multifamily meetup specifically. Don't know if it's ever been done and failed. That's why there's not one here, or if just nobody's done it yet. So let's start it up. When we started that, we did, like a meeting at an insurance office locally, and it was a lot of fun. Like it was like a spark came on, like, ooh, this was cool for me. Like I got in front of a room. I hadn't closed on any multifamily, but I was creating this community. Nobody in the room had either. They were all kind of like me, single family investors looking to step up. And maybe I learned one or two more things than they did. And we had this meeting. And then the next month, the meeting, and the next month, the meeting. And then it was like, boy, to engage this group more with the idea in mind, like the outcome is we could get deals, we can get capital, we can get certain things by being this sort of thought leader in the space locally as a real estate meetup host. We started a Facebook group, and then we would engage people in that Facebook group with like virtual meetings before COVID, plus the in-person meeting, plus content we would post in there. We built a community. And from that, it worked. We got our 16 unit, we got our 22 unit. I've raised capital from the folks that patronized that meetup group. But more than anything, the events were like, dude, they were date nights for people. It was, ugly sweater contests. It was goal setting workshops. It was who can dress the best in green for St. Patty's Day, and you're going to get a free pint of Guinness or what, like it was, yes, a real estate meetup, but we had check-in processes. We had mirrors that took selfies of people and printed it out for them. Like we had a full-on community that once a month, you as an investor are going to go out and take time away from you, your wife, your kids to go do this real estate meetup. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot. But what if I create something where your wife wants to come? She wants to get a sitter for the kids. Yeah, there'll be like a half hour, 40 minutes of this content around real estate, but it's fun. They're giving away iPads, they're doing all this, exchanging books. It was like an event, and I really enjoyed the process of putting these events on, of building community, of creating the content, of hosting whoever the content provider was in that. And then eventually we got on YouTube and we did some other things. So I just I've noticed at a certain point, I can't tell you exactly when, that while real estate was the foundation of what I was talking about, I was more enjoying the brand building and content creation space around real estate than I was the real estate itself. So that was sort of the spark, maybe a year and a half in. It's what got me on Bigger Pockets. It wasn't about, oh, you're this real estate expert. It's like, how do you leverage a network to build a real estate portfolio? It's what got me on all these conferences. Oh, we want to talk to Jamie about networking in real estate, not real estate, but networking in real estate. So I kind of carved out a niche, if you will, in that space as like a networker brand builder in the real estate community.
I like that. So you're building this up. You have a following both locally initially, and then that started to grow outside, and then get on bigger pockets. Momentum kicks in. So there's a point where you shift somewhat away from real estate and focus on that. Like, so real estate was the initial vehicle, both the assets themselves, but also the vehicle to garner attention, right?
Yep.
That's what you were, your initial brand, at least, I guess, was built around. But there's a point where that shifted to, okay, we're just going to go all in on this. So how do you go about that shift, and really, how did your focus shift at that point in time? Like, what did you say?
Such a
Okay,
great
I'm going to
question.
do this.
Yeah. So there's two things. I want to go to the person who might be listening who's saying, yeah, real estate's my path out of my job. And this is really interesting because I say that, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's not the path, but like I'm getting some sense of permission listening to this guy, meaning me, around like, oh, okay, I could start there and end somewhere else. First off is you have to accept that you're likely to pivot. Likely. Not saying you absolutely will, but you're likely to pivot. It's likely to evolve in some way. It doesn't have to be rapid or huge, but Phil, I'll use you as an example. This is what I know. Maybe I'm wrong. But you acquired a portfolio. You had your job. You left that job on the strength of your portfolio. But I heard you say at the beginning of this, Moeller real estate and business. So I'm going to guess that in there somewhere, starting buying businesses became a component. Raising capital for other syndicators and partnering as a general partner became a component of what you do as a real estate professional or as a professional in general. You pivoted, you moved. I think we get too lost in our head, me included, around I did 17 years of school, I did 21 years in corporate. Whatever I do next has got to be the thing. And that paralyzes us from taking action. So I think first and foremost, understand, do what you think is the most reasonable, logical, exciting thing that you think you're going to do, but just understand that that's just version 1.0. And the pace at which you'll reach version 12.0 might be a month, might be 3 months, might be a year, might be 5 years, but you're going to morph, you're going to pivot. So that's one.
Yep.
Two is the point at which, for me, or the way I would give advice on how to know when to or whatever, was for me, it was like, all right, I like what I'm doing in terms of brand building, content creation, community building, and so on. And I realized like, wow, okay, because I'm okay and understanding now that I'm going to pivot a bunch. It was real estate. Then it was like real estate networking guy. Then I got to syndicator. Then it's like, well, I couldn't stand the idea of getting on another call, another YouTube interview, another podcast, asking somebody like, all right, hey, cost sake, let's get into it. What are some of the elements of, toss me out the window at that point. Yep. But what I really enjoyed, again, just kind of keeping your eyes open on the pivot, was every one of these investors had this mindset. They had this like bigger vision, like we were talking about at the beginning. And that, man, I couldn't get enough of that. I could get enough of the real estate and I could tie it in if I needed to, but I can't get enough to this day. I can't get enough of the stories, the sacrifices, the hardships, the losses, the big goal, the bold move, the quit the job, the move abroad. Like people who do those things inspired me more. So for me, it was like, I love brand building. I like real estate, but not enough for me to talk about it all the time. So I love interviews. I love all of that. Let me get more generalized in what I do. And that became Tribe of Millionaires, Go Abundance Emerge, some of the things I'm doing today, and eventually the brand I have with the Dominican Republic.
So I want to state it a little bit, and I want to just talk about what we're doing, because for me, I've talked about this on the podcast before. Real estate or business or whatever you do is a vehicle, but it's just a vehicle to what you also are really, really passionate about. Like you just talked about the stories, the sacrifices, the big moves, the bold moves, the purpose, passion of other people gets you really, really juiced up and having those conversations. And I mean, our listeners are they're going to know this, but we do not like getting into nitty gritty details. I feel like we don't do enough of that on the podcast sometimes, or I worry about that, but it just doesn't excite me as much anymore, to be completely transparent. Like those things are all important for real estate investors and business owners. Those things are important to understand. But giving people the motivation, the inspiration, or even myself is what really, really gets me juiced up. So real estate for me is just the vehicle to get people's attention, and maybe we can help them by bringing a Jamie Gruber on the podcast that can influence them. And honestly, I don't care if it's a different way, completely foreign to real estate, right? It doesn't matter. So I think for the listeners, whatever you're doing doesn't need to be the passion. It can be the vehicle that gets you the next thing. And what I haven't heard people to say before is, like we talk about, you can't connect the dots forward a lot of times, like just take the next step and start moving in that direction. But you take it a step further and you say, No, accept the fact that you're taking a step and then you're going to have to pivot in a different direction completely. Like it's going to happen, but you're not going to know what pivot or what direction you're going to go until you take the first step before the pivot. You have to move.
100%.
So
When I moved to the Dominican, I'll flash forward, but it's just a great example. I remember it was like all these things: when, where do we live, school, insurance, tax. It was a lot, and we were going for a year. But I remember sitting in the parking lot at the Planet Fitness before I went in, overwhelmed by the idea of this big thing we were going to do. And I remember a coach at the time saying, like, "What's the next thing?" I'm like, "You know what? What is the next? Book the flight." So I remember booking the flight for August 23rd, 2022, and it was almost like I stepped out of the fog of all of this stuff, and everything that was like, what do we do? It just became like this line. I saw oh, I have the flight. Well, where are we going to live? Let's grab an Airbnb for a month or two. This one. Okay, so now I got the flight. I know where I'm going to move, and everything just started to kind of steamroll, right? Like one step leads to the next step. To your point, you don't know the dots. You can't connect the dots moving forward. But I just think like until you take step one, it won't reveal step two. And until you take step two, it won't reveal step, say, 3, 4. Until you take step 3, 4, it won't reveal step 5, 6, 7, right? Like, so you have to just take that first step to reveal the next one and the next one and the next one after that. 100%.
help me help the listeners. People, I think people know the direction. I don't know if they know the step. Help me take this. Encourage me, motivate me, inspire me, give me the tactical, like, how do I take that next step?
After you've taken the first step, or take that first step?
First step. Help me take the first step. So especially for those people, okay, there's an executive in a company that's worked there for 15 years, 20 years. It's cushy. It's easy. They're successful. They have the title. They have all the things you talked about. But, you know, they just, I can't, they can't say that they're not imagining, right?
So I'll make it a simple frame. I like frameworks. So I call it the 3 C's. So this is the 3 C's. To take that first step, just do these 3 C's. And it's not saying like you check them off today. These are like, kind of a gradual thing. The first C is clarity. We talked about it. Creative vision. Got to have something compelling you're drawn toward, outcome-based dream. Be a 9-year-old a little bit with this vision, right? Like not practical 42-year-old guy that worked a corporate career, but what do you want really? I want to travel the world. I want to go do this. I want to go do that. I want to build a house on Mars. I don't care what it is, but like have an outcome that you're seeking in the next 5 years that really lights you up. So clarity, one, you got to know where you're going. The second is you have to build confidence. That's the second C, build confidence. Confidence comes when you have that clarity by starting to research, look into, talk to people, whatever it is around the topic or the vision that you have. But third, the foundation of this sort of triangle, if you will, the bottom rung, the bottom part of it, that's the foundation of it all is community. Got to find the people that are going to cultivate the vision that you got in the clarity phase and help you build the confidence. You do those things. If you anchor in to clarity, building your confidence and having the community there to support all of that, that to me, that triad is what gets you to the first step. Because at a certain point, if I know where I'm going and I built confidence in the new identity that I'm creating, and I got people cheering me on to that future version of me we talked about, those imagine when friends, the first step is just inevitable. May not happen in the first day, the first week, the first month after you've achieved this triad, if you will, but it will happen at a certain point, probably much faster than if you don't lean into those 3 C's. Does that help?
So first of all, I'm writing these down. And I'm like, holy cow. So the end of our podcast, it says, define your purpose, define your vision, define your why.
Yep.
Educate yourself, associate with others. Those are your 3 C's right there. And then take action. And the 5th one I add is lead. Be a leader, be an example to it. And I'm working on kind of an acronym around this and some thoughts on books and other things. So I couldn't agree with what you said more. And I'll keep working on my ability to communicate it as effectively as you. But so first of all, I guess maybe we go back to that. So that's phenomenal. And that helps people understand, like, just the confidence you build from research. I think you get a lot of confidence, by the way, from your network and association too. When you start to see other people do it and you're like, you go into a room and you're like, first of all, you're like, oh, these people are all phenomenal. And then you're like, you get to know them a little bit, like, I can do this. This guy can do this. I can do that. So that all builds confidence to get you the courage to take the action. So I love it. Brand building. I mean, what else can you tell us about? I want to talk about brand building a little bit more, and then I want to talk about lifestyle design, because you're like the epitome of lifestyle design. So brand building, like what should people that are interested in this thinking about? And even why should people be thinking about this in the first place? If they're like, I'm not going to be on Instagram or TikTok or social media, I think you're always building your brand, but why should people be interested in this? And then how do you take it to the next level if you want to build a brand online, perhaps?
So much here. I'm going to try to line it up for you because I love the question. I love this topic. So I'll go Gary V first. Gary V talks about it and he's absolutely right. Attention. You want to go where that's what business is. Business is finding, like leveraging attention. He calls it day trading attention, right? So attention is free on social media, YouTube, and platforms like it. It's free. All you have to do is follow a structure that I'll give you in just a little bit that's really unlocked things for me from a brand building perspective. But that's the first reason, right? Like where attention goes, energy flows. So if you can capture attention in your niche, it builds your business, period. That's one. Two is, and this is hopefully to get people like you and me over the mindset around social and or YouTube. And you mentioned the word influencer or creator, these words that can be cringy, maybe to the middle-aged bald dude who feels like he needs to be a bit more mature. Right?
I meant to introduce you as my bald brother, and I forgot to do that. So you have to watch the video, and me and Jamie have some similarities. But keep going.
A lot. The stubble and the baldness.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the point. Like I know for me, the evolution for me when I quit my job, even knowing in my brain, like, what am I? I'm a creator. I'm a social media guy. I can't say that on a plane to people. Oh, what do you do? I'm a real estate investor. Again, it makes sense. Maybe a little later, it was like, I'm going to say podcaster because it sounds a little goofy to me still saying it as a middle-aged dude, but I'm sitting in first class. Kind of cool to be able to say, like, yeah, I'm kind of doing this by podcasting. Podcasting is the core of it. But who I am really is a creator, and I'm starting to lean into that title now. But the problem with that title is it's like, so what? You hack trends on TikTok. You mouth words from another audio and then dance around and like what do you mean you're a creator, an influencer? So goofy, it feels weird. But I would say to reframe it, one, it's where the attention is, and two, you don't need to dance on TikTok. I don't do that. But two is you have to look at brand as an asset class, hard asset, just like real estate is, just like business is. There are many creators out there that have built substantial followings and brands, and they are making money passively off of that. Every YouTube video that I put up is a passive investment vehicle in my portfolio because a video from a year ago just got legs and made a couple $100 last week. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. When you put that content out there, like in real estate, you might need to nurture it a bit. You might need to update it, do a unit turn, update the thumbnail, update the title. It said 2023, best taxes from 2020. Well, it's the same video, new year, 2024, nothing's changed. I'm going to put a nice coat of paint on it and reintroduce it to the world as a new looking product. Same apartment, new paint job, same video, new front, and get that passive investment vehicle with a little bit of love and nurturing to continue to pay me. Just to give you an idea, right? Maybe it's not directly paid through Google AdSense. Maybe it's paid by more business, more affiliate income, whatever it is that you're doing. So the second thing is I think you have to look at brand as an asset class to get the goofy middle-aged guy feeling of dancing on TikTok out of personal brand. Mm-hmm. Disassociate that, associate it with it's way easier. Okay. I think the reason why everybody should have a brand is because it's free, it's easy, and again, it's a hard asset. And I think the big mistake, I think the way people can really lean into this and get traction and see results in a shorter time period, doesn't mean guaranteed, a lot of variables. How dynamic are you? How effective are you in communicating? How entertaining are you? There's all of that, right? But absent the unicorn who can explode because they were just built for YouTube or built for Instagram or whatever, there's really three things that you need to do to stand out as a brand. The first is you need to determine what you stand for or against that derives emotion, that creates emotion. So like I talk to people and I say, well, what do you stand for or against? And they'll say something like, look, I stand for people that want to break out and have big lives. And I stand against, like the mindset that gets them in their own way. And I'm like, that's very sweet. That's very cute. That's not going to make me click on anything. Like, I want to hear really, what are you for or against?
So for me, inspire and educate others to live their God-given purpose. And what I mean by that is I see so many people that are just floating. They're just, honestly, we both relate to it. Corporate job, they're content, and it, like, you see the potential in other people, and it drives me crazy. So I stand for helping those people figure out a different path so they can really live what they're meant, like what they're capable of. Is that
Yep.
is that the right number one?
That's cute. It's sweet. It's very nice. It's like, it's like
Not
looking at
enough.
it's like looking at a bunch of red roses in a thing. Like they all look nice, right? But what's that like? What the hell's up with that like purple, blue, yellow triple size rose in the middle of that? Like what's up with that thing? Like that thing is like standing out and it's got some sort of edge to it. So here's what I would say. I think when you look at this, you stand for people unlocking their potential and growing or whatever. Flip it to the other side. What's preventing them from growing? What are some of the institutions, the factors that are preventing them from realizing what you hope they do? What's holding them back?
Yeah, confidence, fear, financial concerns, what other people think of them.
Let's get to the root of that. Financial concerns. What's the problem? How did they get to this financial position? What could have been better in their past, maybe around financial concerns? How could they have been better financially? What failed them?
I guess I don't know if I'll answer the question directly. What failed them?
This is you. Like, what do you believe got people to the financial position that they're in that they can't break free?
Our educational system and just the thought that they need a safe, secure job, that they need to live, like they need to earn that paycheck all the time, and they're afraid to go away from that.
Now we're getting tighter to something. Now it's like you're going to rise emotion in me when you talk about the terrible financial literacy that we provide. Like you're telling, this isn't me, but let's just play this out. You're telling me that my kids can read a book in a library that talks about whether or not they're a boy or a girl, but you can't teach them how to balance a checkbook in school? Are you kidding me? That's going to rile emotion in people as long as it's authentic. I'm not saying like go out there and be some sort of like hellraiser, preacher who's going to like, be damned to hell or whatever. That's not what I mean. But like whatever it is that you see that might be at the root or at the cause, the institution, the person, the type of individual, the type of corporation or education system, whatever, that's holding people back from realizing what you want them to, like that's what you stand against. If you truly do, now you're still going to start to get emotion out of people in a good way. You're going to start to get people rallied around a common cause. It's not, I want everybody to flourish. And what are you against? I'm against their lack of confidence. Like very cute. Red rose in a sea of red roses. But if it's like, and I'm going to give you like a steroids on this, but if it's like, you see this Phil Moeller guy? No, what's Phil Moeller about? Dude, you know how they keep talking about like, in school, like, nothing around, like this dude like rips apart school districts about like their lack of financial literacy. Like that kids come out of the school, they have a degree and know how to know what Machiavelli did, but they have no idea what it is to invest in a piece of real estate, how to save enough money to put it down, what leverage means. They have no clue. This guy goes friggin' after him. Like that's a compelling brand. Stands for, stands against. Before I go to number 2 and number 3, if you want to pour rocket fuel on that, I believe in this environment, especially post-COVID, when we got so broad and everybody got very comfortable with the world as a small place, localize that. Now imagine for a moment that you're the guy who vehemently despises school districts in central Ohio or wherever the heck you are and is going after them. You're at the school board meetings being filmed showing how this book is in your library, but this kid doesn't know what a cap rate is. I'm already getting fired up, right? Like if I'm watching you and I'm a parent in central Ohio, you don't need the world, man. There's how many people are in central Ohio? Columbus, Cincinnati, what?
Right.
2 million?
Yeah.
And how many of them are parents who would agree? They might be, I don't know, right or left leaning like you are, whatever you are. They might be Christian or not Christian like you are, whatever you are, right? They're going to resonate with you as a brand if it's something authentically that you feel is holding people back from achieving what you think they can.
Yep.
Freaking financial literacy in school, in central Ohio schools. You do this, but you don't do that. This is crazy. This is what needs to be. That's going to rile emotion. What do you stand for? What do you stand against? Either or works. You can have both, but that elicits passion. That's number 1 to branding.
And I love it. I have to say, because this is, first of all, I agree that our financial system is not where it needs to be. I am at all the school board meetings because in our local school board, I'm on the school board. So I'm not, but we are also very fortunate to be in a school system that is there's localized beliefs and it's just very, very, very strong. So I want to make sure I say that, but I think it illustrates the point. I think you've illustrated the point of number 1 so well, because so for the listeners, like what do you stand for or against that elicits or derives emotion, and ask yourself a couple of times, why is this, and get to really the root of that. That's the message, not the specific example, but the message
Yes.
of it. Like how, just keep asking yourself why and keep digging deeper.
We're using that as an example, and it's uncomfortable. And you know how I know it's uncomfortable? Because you had to disclaim my random example of the fact that, oh my God, if somebody hears this and I'm on the school board, that's uncomfortable. It's not
Right.
It's not fun. You're going to create love and hate from other people to some extent, like, at least in the way in which they communicate with you. You're going to elicit emotion.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean
right.
positive emotion. You're going to have people that are like, this guy is a MAGA, right-leaning, whatever, or he's a lefty, Kamala Harris loving whatever, right? Like, you're going to elicit that emotion in people, and it just is. It just is.
I like
want to get
that.
too high with the love, too low with the hate. But number one is, what do you stand for or against? If you want to stand out as a brand, number one, and if you want to pour rocket fuel on that, you localize that, man, that could be, you can build significant brand equity in your market around what you stand for or against. I should throw the word in again, authentically.
Yep.
Real quick on my brand in the Dominican Republic. When I moved there, it was like, this place is amazing. I've been there a bunch, but like to live there, like it's safer here. There's no random school shootings. There's no mall shootings. There's none of that crap there.
Right.
Kids and women are cherished in the Dominican Republic. Like you see a pregnant woman walk in a store, people drop their shopping cart to push hers around. Like it's a crazy connected society. And then I see these people putting out stuff about third world. And it's like, nah, not on my watch. So what do I stand against? Like, stop denigrating this amazing place, the people, the culture, the safety, the education system, the progress, the economic system in place. Like, this place is amazing. I stand for that. But what elicits emotion is like, screw you when you try to degrade this place.
Yeah.
I believe it. That's authentic to me.
That's
so
awesome.
That's step one.
Yep.
Right? What do you stand for? What do you stand against?
Love it.
Once you've defined that, the next thing you have to decide, what do I stand for? What do I stand against? Is what is my unique advantage in that space? Unique advantage in that space, not an advantage, but specifically unique to you. Look at me. I'll look at me as in this example. So I talk about like, hey, I'm for people understanding the value of this amazing country, and I'm against people who degrade it, right? And I see a ton of potential and everything else. So after that, what's my unique advantage is, well, shit, I'm here.
Yeah.
I could show you. I could go outside. Like I could sit in this office in Michigan and do the same content. So could somebody in Kentucky or Ohio or California. But the unique advantage I have is, let me go outside and show you. Let me interview a guy on the street. Let me take you to this real estate development. Let you meet this realtor. Let me tour this community that was just built. Let me show you what driving is like. Let me take you on a trip with my family to this Airbnb on the North Shore. Like I could show you that. So that's my unique advantage in what I'm for and against.
And you have the perspective of both. You lived in the U.S., so you understood that really, really well. So you have the perspective of the difference. Whereas someone that's been in the DR their whole life, they don't have that perspective of the difference. You have an amazing perspective of both. So it's, that advantage is, other people can't touch that. So I love it.
100%.
Very unique.
100%. And then we get into, once you've defined what your unique advantage is who are you serving? Who are you serving with that? So again, look at me. I'm a middle-aged dude, made a bunch of money in a corporate career. I understand that world. I quit the job. I moved abroad to this amazing country, and here I am being an advocate for it. So who I serve, I learned this as I went along, is middle-aged Dominican diaspora, so American, European, Canadian, making, I don't know, $100,000 to $300,000 a year, who have interest in investing and moving back to repatriating to the Dominican Republic. My audience is here in the United States. My audience is in Europe. My audience is in Canada. It's not much. It's a little bit English-speaking versions in the Dominican Republic, expats in the Dominican Republic. About 12% of my audience is there. 80 plus is in the United States, Europe, and Canada. So, but I know who I serve. So when I get on, the importance of all of this is, okay, I know what I stand for and against. I know what my unique advantage is, and then I know who I serve. That funnel, if you will, allows me to create content for the person I'm looking to serve. So I'm not going to get on and talk to people, and I get these comments all the time, like, how can you say it costs $10,000 a month to live in parts of the Dominican Republic when a percentage of the population makes $500 a month? And I always reply, like, that's not my audience. They're not watching me. That's not who I serve. So when I speak of and I share the Dominican Republic, I share it from an expat experience who is making a decent living, and I could afford to live in a country that in many ways is less expensive in a really, really cool way. I could live in the best parts. I could travel to the best parts. I could show you the greatest restaurants. I could show you the most amazing investments. I could show you what a $5 million house looks like. I'm not going to take you to a shack that's worth 20 grand in the backwoods of the Dominican Republic because that's not my audience. Like, why would I make that content? Here's a small example. I actually talked to my coach about this. Like, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take him to like 4 grocery stores and show him the different pricing. He's like, why? Your audience doesn't care about the difference between, high-end grocery store and mid, like they're going to pay you what, 20% more, an extra $200-300 a month. Like, that's not your audience. Show your audience where Starbucks is. Show your audience where they can get the prime cut of steak. Show your audience where the delivery service is that brings in, whatever, sushi on a Wednesday for you. Like, that's your audience. And he's right. Yeah. Like, that's who I serve because I know what I stand for and against, my unique advantage in that, and who I serve. So you define those things, it informs your content creation and how you exactly create it.
And this can be applied. I mean, so if business owners, whoever it is, they can apply this in a lot of different fields, right? I mean, this is a marketing strategy in a lot of ways for a lot of businesses.
Yes. Hey, look, if you own a cement company, you might stand against the crap work that cement contractors are doing in your specific market. They don't seal, I don't even know anything about cement, but they don't seal coat underneath the grout. I don't even know if that makes any sense, but you get my point. Like they're like, man, let me show you another crappy job, right? Like, look at this stuff. This is what they're charging. How much did you pay for this, man? $500 for this. Like, imagine that. Like, these contractors, man, they're taking advantage of us. If I really, truly am annoyed by my industry being taken over by scam artists and people that aren't doing a great job as a cement contractor, and I go out there and say, okay, that's what I'm against. I'm so sick of people getting screwed with bad work and paying a top dollar for that. My unique advantage, I know the ins and outs of the cement industry in Columbus, Ohio. And who do I serve? I serve people that want the job done right, that have the money and the means, not to bargain shop, but to pay for the best guy to come do the job right the first time. Yeah. Now I'm not going to make content for the DIY person, right? I'm not going to show somebody how to do the cement work. I'm going to show them how bad the cement work was and why what I do is different. Like, what they didn't do was include this. You don't need to know how or the ins and outs or like trowel on this. You don't need to know any of that. But I will tell you, like, they're not including this. And all of a sudden your audience, the people that patronize you, are like, yeah, this guy, he's the best. Like, I don't know, something about like a base coat of whatever. I don't know. Like, dude, just listen, he's in the weeds on it. He knows what he's doing. I hired that guy. He's a little more expensive, but boy, he's right. I haven't had to do the job again. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
what I like about it is the whole process not only gives you, it gives you, like, going through the exercise yourself is going to give you a lot of clarity to what your unique advantage is and who your customer is. But it's also, by going through that process, now all of a sudden you have a marketing plan and a marketing strategy. I mean, you got to do other work around it. But I want to talk a little bit, and then I know we got to wrap up here. But like, what does lifestyle design mean? It was kind of talked about earlier. Like, what does that mean for you?
So lifestyle design, I would say, converts the need for financial freedom to come passively to financial or lifestyle freedom to come actively. Let me define that. Many of us watch Bigger Pockets, listen to Bigger Pockets, or we get into real estate around this idea of like, okay, I make $10,000 a month. I want to replace that. So I got to go buy a bunch of real estate that pays me $100 a door, 100 doors, 10,000, whatever. You build you build it back, which makes all makes sense. The reality of real estate, this is what I learned, might not be your reality or somebody else's, is, okay, I bought that building, and now I need to, if you're buying any kind of value add property, now I need to reposition that building. So I have some capital, but I'm going to inject some of the cash flow that I would put in my pocket based on what Bigger Pocket says back into that building. And then I might cash out, refi, or sell it in a few years. So the reality of real estate to me is it's a long-term game. It's the best long-term game. Like wealth building, people that make money should dump it into real estate. If you don't want to be the real estate investor yourself, give it to somebody who's trustworthy and let them invest it for you. Real estate is the best vehicle for where your money can go. Tax advantages, income growth, or cash flow, debt pay down, and appreciation.
Yep.
Best vehicle, right? But if you're going to be an active investor, typically it takes probably longer than your tolerance might be to change your life. In other words, you're 38 years old. You want to go, travel the world or do what I did, move to another country. Might take you 10 years with real estate, some cash out events, some liquidity events or whatever. Maybe you could do it faster, but might take you a little bit of time. To me, what I would rather see is define what you would do actively. Like that. Here's a better way of putting it. If you got $100 million tomorrow, lottery winner, Powerball winner, and you didn't have to do a thing, you had no financial stress, no financial needs whatsoever. Let's get past the first year or two where you're going to travel and buy your mom a house and all that stuff. Like, fine.
Yep.
But you're at the end of it, you were 40 and now you're 42. You're still young and you're like, all right, there's only so much of this like chill life I can do. I got to do something. Like, what would that be? How would you spend your time? What do you love to do? So rather than focus on, let me grit my teeth and buy a bunch of real estate if it's not what you love, and go down that path of being an active real estate investor if it's not what you love, and try to build a portfolio that will eventually passively get me out of my job in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, convert over. It could be in your company. I thought about this when I was a claims director. Like, do I take a demotion to go work in the real estate department? I kind of enjoy real estate. That'd be kind of a cool job for me, but I couldn't travel the world, so that wasn't an option. But find work, because we all are. If somebody's listening to this, they're an active person. They're never going to retire. You don't retire from a life you love, as Cody Sanchez once said.
Yep.
So if find work that's fulfilling, that can get you toward whatever your lifestyle design is, rather than trying to stay in this thing that you hate and build this thing over here that you hope one day frees you from it. The example for me is, I had my job. I was building my real estate portfolio. It wasn't fulfilling for me. I love what real estate does. I don't love being the real estate guy. Having interactions with these people and talking about these concepts of goal setting and vision setting and everything. And then like, wow, it's actually creating an income stream for me. So for me, it's like, okay, that's a really cool way for me to make money. And by the way, does it fulfill my vision of being able to live and go anywhere in the world for 3 months? Like, yeah, I could do that remotely. When Quantum came along and said, hey, you're buying this stuff in the Midwest, why don't you partner with me and just worry about the people side of it? Marketing, networking, capital raising, investor relations. I'm like, wait a minute. So I can have the real estate piece in hand, experience there, but do it in a way that serves me, which is like the interpersonal stuff, the networking, the building of brand and all of that stuff. I can do that from anywhere too. So it serves my vision. You know what I'm saying? So like, I found paths to fulfilling kind of vertical income or active income way faster than I would have if I stayed in my job trying to make the passive income to replace my income currently.
Yep. And what I like about that is, like, I think the message, and it goes back to your 3 C's, but find out what you want to do, implement the 3 C's, but don't wait forever. Like, don't wait 20 years, or don't say, hey, I'll retire when I'm 65. Like that. And life's too short to do that. So love it, Jamie. So much value here. I want to ask you a couple of closing questions. First of all, if you just step back and reflect kind of the last, couple of years, few years, whatever that is, how does what you have done and what you're doing, how does it make you feel?
Inspired is the word. Like, if I were a guy in my accountability pod told me, like, well, you should sit down and write your story as if you're writing about somebody else. That was a really powerful exercise. And when I wrote down, like, this guy was making this much, he quit his job, he did this, he did that, he moved to another country, he's doing this, he's got a brand. I'm like, wow. Like, if it's not your own life, it's like your kids. You watch your kids grow, and then your relatives who only see them twice a year are like, oh my God, how fast they've grown. Like, you don't notice it until they notice it for you. It's kind of the same thing. Like, I don't notice the path I'm on because I'm just kind of doing it and enjoying my day to day. But when I wrote it down, it was like, wow, that dude's inspiring. So the word that comes to mind is inspired.
That's awesome. You do that for your past self, or is that a vision exercise as well to take yourself?
It's write your story as is. Like, where are you? Write the story of the last few years. Like, write the story of this person. Here's who this guy is. Like, as if it's not you. Like, take the license of writing it. And it's a really powerful way of, like, you could do it. If you wrote it down, it would be a similar story. Like, you were doing this gig, you were buying real estate. This person did this. He's got this many kids. He ended up leaving his job. He started this podcast. He's interviewing these types of people. You know what I mean? Like, when you write it down, like, as if it's not you, it's just like, wow.
Right.
It's pretty cool. It's just, I like
it.
It creates evidence for you, I guess, for you to go forward. Like, wow, I can accomplish a lot. I don't even recognize how much I have.
It's very affirming, right? It's a very affirming exercise. What do you think has been your key factor to success?
I think it's just a ready, fire, aim mentality. I'm not analytical at all. There's a good and bad to that. The bad is I leave a lot of stuff in my wake. Like, if you look behind, people see the outward success. Oh, like, he lives in the Dominican, all the cool stuff. But if you peek behind me, there's like, a barrel tipped over with things pouring out of it. There's broken glass. But I think it's my superpower in that I can ready, fire, aim. It's like, all right, this is what I want to do. Go. And then I understand, and I think this is pivotal, that if I deviate from that path, or if I decide that's not the right path, you don't return back to zero and start down another path.
Yeah.
You take elements of the path that you were on and form a new one. Yeah. So I think it's knowledge of that and the ability just to act.
Well, when you have when you have the mindset, ready, fire, aim, but then you also know that you're going to adapt in the future and you can adapt like you talked about earlier, I think that's a really powerful combination.
100%.
What would you say is your most impactful, I'll say business, real estate, personal development, whatever, is like a book or two that you would recommend to the audience?
I think 10X is easier than 2X is so underrated. I love that book. Benjamin Hardy, Dan Sullivan. 10X is easier than 2X. The other book that I think really, really lands the plane in terms of what true evil is a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It's a lesser known book than Think and Grow Rich, but boy, it really outlines for you like really, really the devil's true deeds. And yeah, I'll leave it there. It's a great book.
Awesome. I've heard that before, and Napoleon Hill, of course, I've heard of. 10X is easier than 2X is a phenomenal book. So I need to check out Outwitting the Devil because I've heard of it before. Jamie,
amazing on Audible too.
I appreciate it so much. I mean, just your story, kind of your initial plan and the anchor vision that you had, but then how that shifted over time and completely changed, and just knowing and seeing how, like, when you write your story backwards and how you stepped in, you started taking action, ready, fire, aim, but then all the adaptation that you made over time, the knowledge and that you skilled on just building your brand and building your company, even marketing strategy was so helpful for me personally. So I appreciate it. So much wisdom and value to our listeners. So thank you so much. How can our listeners find out more about you, Jamie?
Instagram, so at the Jamie Gruber. You can DM me there, and I'd be happy to connect.
Awesome. Again, Jamie, so much value, so much wisdom, so much inspiration. You know, you talked about how you're inspired by your story. Well, you brought the heat today. You inspired a lot of other people. So I greatly appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you.
For the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Moeller Real Estate, visit our website at www.moellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.